Hi, everybody, and welcome to our next Civics Outreach seminar series. We're excited to have you today. Today, we're going to talk about G Suite features and how you, as an administrator of your G Suite, can help your team as an organization. So we're excited to have you today. Make sure if you have any questions, you just put them down below or in the chat box. We're happy to answer them at the end. We'll give folks a few minutes to jump on here and we'll get started once the music stops. So Andrea, why don't you take away the music? Awesome. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining our latest Civics Outreach webinar. Today, we're going to talk about G Suite admin features. Today, we have James joining Andrea and I, who's going to tell us all the things that we need to know about our G Suite admin console and ways that you can secure and protect your organization. So without further ado, James, why don't you take it away?
Great, and thank you so much for having me on the show today. I'm really kind of excited to talk about some of the different things that we have. Often when people think about G Suite or think about going Google and using this, they often think it's just a Microsoft Office replacement. And G Suite is so much more. It's a way of managing everything that goes on in your business from a technology standpoint. And often those features, it's not just the documents and spreadsheets and Gmail and all those wonderful things that you get to use and collaborate with. That when you're talking about from an administrative standpoint, there's a ton of stuff in there that we often miss. So I thought today what we do is we dive down into some of those different things that make G Suite such an amazing platform. So we got kind of a quick agenda here. We're going to do Security Center, mobile device management, context awareness, and data loss prevention. Don't worry if you don't know what those things are. We're going to go over them in lots of detail. So one of the things I did want to point out here that gives us kind of just a second here to talk about is we have a massive learning website or place you can go and find out how G Suite works, all the different things, not just for administrators, but for the users as well. It's at gsuite.google.com/learning-center. And you can do things like learn by the product or by your role in your occupation. If you're switching from some other platform, we've got all that information here at the Learning Center, and it's really a great resource to dive into. So just wanted to flash that up on the screen so everybody knew what it was. So let's start by talking a little bit about Security Center. It's a new piece, the G Suite Enterprise, and it definitely is worth the upgrade and something that kind of distinguishes us from a lot of other things. Now, I'm going to go into more detail on each of these, but just kind of a rundown on the different things you're going to see today in the Security Center dashboards, how we deal with health across the entire organization, and then also looking at investigating threats and things that might come up while you're trying to run and manage all of your users. And so here's kind of just a snapshot of what you'll see if you're in the admin panel and you go to security and dashboards. You'll get a dashboard that allows you to look at just with a glance to see what's going on. Am I getting a bunch of extra spam coming in, or is there some phishing going on? What's happening with those? What's my user adoption rates like? Is there a problem with message deliveries? Are people complaining that emails aren't getting delivered? What's that look like? And we basically take all that information across all these different products and put it all in one place. So it's very easy for you to see and figure out what it is that is going on. And so, once you see an area on the dashboard, which is having you look at a whole bunch of different things at once, if you see something going on, like spam is on the rise, you can click into one of those tiles and then be able to start doing analytics and start looking at classifications, what domains things are coming from, sort by date ranges, and then start looking at that. And you can also see, for instance, here's a really good example here on our spam filter that we have a number of messages by subject. So that might be something where you are seeing a lot of spam that's coming in. You can find out how many there are. And what you can do from there, and we'll talk about this later, is you can actually click down through those and do an investigation. So that's really pretty exciting as well to find out what users might have that. Another part of the security dashboard is being able to view reports. So we have an extensive number of reports inside of G Suite that you can run. I've got a list here, just kind of this is actually a short list, believe it or not. There's more reports, and of course you can have customized reports and things like that. But this is just kind of an idea of looking at, is it spam? Are messages being delivered? What are the users up to? Are they having login failures? Do you suspect that they could have some kind of suspicious activity going on in their device? And what can you do about those? Sorry, I actually clicked into one of those. Uh, so let's also talk a little bit about the help. So when you're new to G Suite, you're a new administrator. We do have training for administrators that are back there on the G Suite learning page that I was talking about earlier. But one of the things that it can be daunting. There's a lot of settings. G Suite is a massive product, and it covers everything in your domain, from the devices to the applications that are being used, and Chromebooks and email and all that stuff. It's a lot of settings, thousands of settings. And for a new administrator, you might be wondering, well, how do I know that I haven't missed something? How do I know that something isn't set to a way that it's not secure? And if that's the case, how would I ever find it? And so we've made that really, really easy. Instead of having to go through and be an expert right from day one and start diving into that, we've created the Security Health Checkup, which goes through and looks at hundreds of applications that you have running within G Suite and analyzes them for security. And what you see here, and this is a great picture here because it shows over on the side, they'll have green check marks or they'll have a little star next to them letting you know that if it's a green check mark, then everything's good. That all those settings are matching up to what we see as a best practice for these settings. And if it's not, then you can actually click on the little diamond there, the little star, and see what the recommendation is. You can see what we're saying, from a standpoint, here's how you could make this service more secure. And this is what you could do. And then we provide links to the documentation. You can just click directly onto that and read more about why you might want to change that setting or why that might make it more secure for you. And then, of course, clicking on any certain line will take you directly to the place in G Suite that has that certain setting, so that you can just quickly change the settings or update those to be more in line with your security policies. So it's a fantastic tool. It allows you to do things that we're measuring for all kinds of different threat types. So here's just a kind of a list of the different things that our artificial intelligence is looking at, that's taking into account all these different settings and how things might be being used or misused, and giving you really good information about that. These are some of the products, of course, that we're monitoring. So you could definitely expect email, since it is the number one vector for getting into cracking somebody's password, getting in there. Something that we recommend that everyone uses is security keys. It's the two-factor authentication. You can use your Android or phone to do that if you want to, or you can get actual physical keys. We use physical keys, and they are fantastic. They're 100%. I'm going to say 100%, even though some people might argue with me, but I'm going to say they're 100% cure for any kind of phishing attempt. It doesn't matter if somebody got your credentials. If they don't have that key, they cannot log in as you, and it will ask for the key every time that you're logging into some kind of a new device or anything like that. Even with Google, with its hundreds of thousands of employees, we have not had a single phishing attempt since we went to, or successful phishing attempt since we went to using security keys. And we have those reports from the customers that we work with all over the world. Of course, we're looking at the drive settings, groups, sites. If you have marketplace apps installed, then it's also looking at those too, and we'll be able to scan those for different kinds of issues that might come up and make sure you have the best security. So you might be wondering, well, that's great. I've got all my security set up and I've got my dashboard set up, but I saw something that looks dangerous, and it's going on there. So what we included is an investigation tool. So if you do see some kind of suspicious activity going on, then we're able to go through, and you can, with just a click, you can click on whatever you saw that suspicious activity and start diving into an investigation. And it'll lead through the different menus and things like that. and allow you to be able to quickly find out, well, if this was a phishing attempt, how many of my users actually got that email, got that phishing attempt that did make it through? How many there have it? How many have opened it? And then you can also, with the investigation tool, take immediate action on those things. So you can pivot to say, okay, well, these users didn't open the email. It's still sitting in their inbox. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete that right out of their inbox. They'll never have a problem. The ones that did open it, they may have lost their username and password. So I can immediately suspend their accounts and have them change their passwords or request a change directly from an admin. So there's very quick action that can be taken using those kinds of using the investigation tool. So the next thing I'd like to jump into, this is often one of those things that we don't know, we don't often are known for very much, though, is in G Suite, is device management. So it turns out that G Suite has a massive device management system that allows you to not only manage your Android and iPhone devices, but also Windows 10 devices. And being able to do all the things you would do with any other modern mobile device management, things like controlling the users and being able to register those, have your own company-owned phones, and be able to distribute those in a secure fashion, that can all be done inside of G Suite. So it's really amazing the different things we do. But one of the things that we do, because we are Google, we're always trying to look at the user experience and making it easy. Mobile device management can just be crazy complex with lots of terminology. It's hard for somebody who doesn't have experience in that that area of expertise to be able to get in there and really start to work with things. And so we've made our mobile device management, we've taken all that complexity and just made it super, super easy. And of course, one of the things, because we always look at scale here at Google, we've made this system to where it can scale to hundreds of thousands of devices without any problem at all. So right out of the box, you've got that Google global kind of expansion ability. Of course, here again, one of the things that's great about our dashboard system is it'll also give you insights into what those mobile devices are doing, and we can see that. You can manage not just the mobile devices, you can manage the applications on them, the desktops, different endpoints, Chrome devices, kiosk type devices, all that kind of stuff can fall into our mobile device management policies. We have several different ways, and I'll talk about that here in an upcoming slide of how you can distribute the mobile device management. It can be completely agentless, so that your users aren't having to install anything, and they can have just security right out of the box, just using it and signing into the apps that they would use on their phone to access corporate data. But we're also able to give that a checkpoint. So you can set it up in the admin console here to ask an admin that every device that's going to come and access into your equipment has to be okayed by an admin. So even if users are bringing their own personal phone, then we can that's perfectly okay. That's great. You can still manage and secure that data and keep it safe, and be able to have a lot of different settings that are right there. And you can see here in the list, it's very easy to use. We have filters and devices. It's super friendly. You can see who the person is that's trying to connect that device. What email they're coming from. What kind of device they have. And then, of course, the bigger, deeper capabilities of being able to go down in here. We have a lot of settings for iOS, being able to manage. So if you're having a whole bunch of devices that you're going to distribute, you can add all those and put them into managed corporate devices, which has an extra layer of security, and be able to keep track of them, keep track of their updates, know where they're at. All of those kinds of really great features that you would expect for a mobile device management piece. Two different flavors. So basic device management, and really from a user perspective, especially on Android, is the user's just going to sign in with their account and to whichever service. So if they're signing into Google Drive or Gmail, they would just sign in like they normally would. And they will start using those apps, and that's great. Now, if you suspect there's some kind of an issue or their account has been compromised or the phone has been lost, then you can immediately wipe that corporate information off the device without having to affect any of the other users' information, those kinds of things. It's really very, very nice and secure. We just recommend that everybody enables at least basic device management. Now, if you're distributing your own devices, or you want the highest level of protection, then we get into the advanced device management. And that allows us to be a lot more specific about what we do. We actually set up an extra sandbox on the phone that's the work information, a work profile. Everything's gated inside of there, so you can't get data in or out to the other apps in the phone. Can't copy something from the work application and put it into a personal application if you do have to bring your own devices. Of course, corporate devices that you're distributing, you can lock those down so that they're just that account, just the corporate account, and be able to control them that way. And you can do a lot of other things like controlling which networks they can join to, screen locks, passwords, being able to wipe a device completely, reset them, lock them down. All of that kind of stuff is in the advanced features, as well as pushing out policies and things like that. When it comes to Windows 10, of course, you're able to set what policies would be pushed out to those Windows 10 devices and be able to manage them just like any other remote device. Quick look at the dashboard that you see. Here we see an example of a bunch of users, different kinds of phones. We can see whether they're company-owned phones or user-owned phones, which version of Android they're running. We can, of course, set all kinds of policies and alerts that the admin will let it be notified if somebody's running a version of Android that's too far out of date, and we can request that they update their phones so that they're running the latest security patches and those kinds of things, and keep everybody safe and well, and know that we're doing our best at taking care of the security. Just a couple of things. So there is it, because Android and iOS are vastly different systems from an operating system standpoint. They do have different features, but we are allowing, we're able to do a lot of these different kinds of settings that they're pretty much, these are like the top settings that you would see that everybody's going to ask for. We, of course, go a lot deeper than this. On being able to have, there's literally hundreds of settings that you can have on different devices, but this is just kind of a quick rundown of the different things that you might see when you're looking at what we're offering there. The other piece to that, of course, is controlling the device is one portion of it, but controlling the apps that people have is really kind of that other piece of it. So we believe that devices can be insecure, user authentication can be insecure. We need to not just keep the devices safe, keep the location safe where people are in there, but also keep the applications themselves safe, no matter what device they're running on. And so here on mobile device management, you see that you can choose which kinds of apps can be installed from that use corporate data. And then you can also control, so you can do that right down to the organizational unit level, and be able to keep track of say that we only want to have certain people within a certain department access Google Drive, and you can keep that locked down from their phone and keep that locked down. Same thing with other apps you might install. So maybe it's a third-party app that's using single sign-on. We can do that with say LinkedIn or any of those other apps that you're adding there. And users also see, you can, of course, force install some apps, for some work apps for them, but then you can also give them access to a specialized Play Store that allows them to also install other apps that might also be approved, but not necessarily for everybody, but something that they might want to look at later. On iOS, we also have a very similar experience on being able to manage applications and what you can do with those. So that's similar, but a little bit different. we're constantly coming out with new updates to these different systems, things like keeping track of the data exfiltration and all those different features that we really know help secure those mobile devices no matter where they are. Next up is context-aware access. So this is something that we have been working on here for the last year or so. And it's really kind of, it's a fascinating way of looking at things. But what it allows us to do is it allows us to take a look at, really especially now that we're working from home, we're not connected to a network cable. Our computer's not connected to a network cable inside of an office, that we have control over the perimeter of the office, and no data can get out because we're not even connected to the internet. It's just internal, right? That's like, I know that's probably an example that's like maybe 15 years old, but we've really kind of looked at that same kind of aspect of, well, how can we still maintain that same kind of control over access, even though the devices are not even remotely in any kind of an office? And we've seen over the years where some of the older systems are still in existence, like you might see a VPN. We heard when the situation with the COVID virus had come out, that a lot of people tried to go home, and then suddenly they were needing to come in over VPNs, and those were overtasked and not able to handle that kind of load. And so, that's a way of basically connecting. You're basically running a very long internet, Ethernet cable from the work location to your home and trying to tunnel through that. And it's looking at it being more let's create a secure network as opposed to let's create a secure environment for the device itself, regardless of where it might actually be. And so we came up with this concept of Beyond Corp, where we just don't trust anything. And we use several different kinds of ways of finding out how if we should allow access or not. So of course, user's identity, the network that we're seeing, the application, is it secure, is the use of it authorized, and then also now diving into, with contextual awareness, the location of a certain device. So we have a little diagram here of just kind of the idea. So you may be connecting to on-premise stuff. We do have a way of syncing those kinds of identities over to our identity system, and then being able to go through and find out, well, we have users, we know how they log in, we know how to authenticate, two-factor, all those kinds of things. We have devices, and then we have the applications. And so when we're looking into context awareness, we dive right down into that application layer, and we allow you to start setting up rules that dictate how a certain application should behave, and what context that should actually should be allowed to that. And so you're able to do things like set a geofence around something, or IP fence around something. So you can say, well, I only want my users to be able to access the Google Drive when they're at the office. And so you can set up the IP range for your internal network on the office. And if that device is not in that IP range, it won't connect to Google Drive. And we also have regionalities and things like that. And so that you can say something like, well, if they're not in the US, then we don't want any of their applications to work at all, because their phone might be stolen and then shipped off to a foreign country. And as soon as they crack it or whatever they do to it to get into it, assuming we haven't wiped it already because of the mobile device management, we have this extra layer of security on top of that would allow you to then, it's still not going to work because of the way you've set up the contextual awareness. So it's a very powerful way of taking care of just more security in assuring that whatever the device happens to be, it's not going to get improperly used if it falls into the wrong hands. And speaking of, now that we talked all about devices and managing the people and the security features around that, and being able to see what's going on with the data and all that kind of stuff, we're going to kind of move to that next piece, which is taking the authorized users who have access, that should have access, and making sure that they don't make a mistake and ship that data, that sensitive data, outside of the domain. We do this with something that's called DLP. And so this is available. My example here today is about Drive, but this is also in email, and you're able, and we'll be bringing more things online as far as that goes as well. And so essentially what DLP is, it stands for data loss prevention, and it allows you to set up all these rules that will keep users from sending information outside of the domain. And so why it's important is that, data leaks can be like, you could lose like specialized corporate information that would allow a competitor to see information. It could be political information or strategies or things that are not approved for public consumption, things that are actually restricted, like information that's about a certain case or something like that. It could be personal identifying information. It could be HIPAA. All those different kinds of things that are not for public viewing or not for outside of the agency type viewing are all things that we want to make sure that we're keeping a close eye on. And so just a couple of examples here that I'll throw up on the screen here. So we want to make it not just something that you enforce, but something that's also easy for your users to understand. And so a couple of the new things that you'll start seeing in our latest versions of our DLP is highlighting the reason why. So we're not just going to say, sorry, you can't share this document outside of your agency, but here's the sensitive information. We'll highlight it in the document and say, here's why you can't share it. Because of this certain information, and there's the policy that applies to that. So it's also prescriptive to the user as well. You can have a lot of different levels. So maybe you do want to allow that sensitive information to be shared outside, but you want somebody to be notified. And so we can alert administrators about that, about if there's a violation. And then of course, attempts at trying to get that data out is all logged. So if you have policies in place, you can see who's trying to send information out, and see why what was trying to be sent out. And so it gives you a way of tracking down that information and being able to find out if something was leaked, as well as just setting up some general guidelines. Like, you probably don't want people sending their bank numbers and their social security numbers and those kinds of things externally or even internally, and you can do that. And so here's just kind of a quick rundown how it works. You set up a rule, we scan all of the documents, and then you can set up an action to be taken if we find something that matches your policy, and then moving that on to alerts and other types of reporting. You can do a lot of different things. I've got a bigger picture of this coming up on the next slide, so don't try to read that tiny little text because we're going to blow it up here in a second. But you set up the scope. So is it the whole domain? Is it certain organizational use? Is it a certain group? So you can set this down to be just specific groups of people. Like they may be across the organization, but they're all working on a very sensitive project. You can put them all into a group and then have the different types of things. We have a lot of different file type detectors. There's default detectors, there's regex detectors, there's word lists. So you can be very specific. You can say if it contains the word project X, don't let that be shared outside of the domain. So we can take care of those kinds of things. And then of course we can take the appropriate actions. Here's kind of that bigger list of some of those default detectors I was talking about. So we make it really easy. So you don't have to figure out how to program one of these. You just select it from a dropdown. So if you want to say social security numbers, driver's license numbers, drug enforcement, administration, DEA number, no problem. Just select those from the list and we'll handle the rest. So it's very super easy to set up, and really works kind of pretty much anywhere in the world that you might have some of those different kinds of numbers. And if something's not covered, if it's some kind of specialized case numbering system you have, you can use a regex for that and be able to set those up as well. And they're pretty easy to write. So that's kind of where I'm going to end off today, and I'm going to kick it over for questions.
Awesome. Thanks so much, James. I feel like every time I hear about new G Suite stuff, new things about the admin console, I learn stuff every single time. So we truly appreciate everything that you taught us today. So just a question here, kind of about sharing documents. So I know in the age that we're in, everybody working from home, you can't just lean over to your neighbor and say, hey, will you take a look at this? We really are based on online communication. So can you talk about why it's so important to have those different settings on all of your different documents, slides, sheets, whatever it is that you're working on?
Yeah. So, really, we've moved into this world where you don't have to be in the office anymore. It's kind of like we're not in the office right now, and we're showing all this information. You were just watching a Google slideshow. That's what that was built on. And especially when your organization gets large and you have people working from literally anywhere now. All right, they're on their phone, they're editing a Google document on their phone, or it's a tablet, or it's a Chromebook, and these things can just be scattered all over the place. We really lose control of a lot of that, of the devices themselves and the access. And so we have to have a way to know what's going on and be able to see that in a simple way. Because if you have 30,000 people, like some of our state governments do, that they're trying to manage, you can't track them all down and try to keep notes on who's got what device in a spreadsheet, and if you actually secured that and all those things. So you have to have a system in place to be able to do that and be able to track that, be able to see where things are going on, and really centralize it, because that's the hard part for the admin. Is admins can't just run around to 9 different systems trying to figure out which system am I going to find this problem in? It's going on, and I'm losing time, and data's being lost, and I don't know what to do. It's like, let's make it simple, and that's what we do in G Suite. Is just we make it super simple for the admin.
Absolutely. I know, even as somebody who was a G Suite administrator myself, I know it's really easy to assign roles and permissions and really work together as an organization, because at the end of the day, that's what we hope for, is that everybody is able to work together in a great manner and also be secure while doing so. So I think that that's really important. So if anybody's watching has any questions, feel free to comment them in the chat box below. We're happy to get to them. I don't see any more so far, but we'll give folks a minute to pop those in there. I will just give a plug for our webinar next week, same time, same place, same day of the week. Next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll be talking about ways that nonprofits can utilize Google for Nonprofits to get their message out there. So make sure to tune into that if you are a 501c3 organization and want to learn more about Google for Nonprofits. That'll be next Wednesday at 2 p.m. And of course, if we didn't get to your question today, I don't see any more in the box below. But if you do have additional questions or just want to contact us, the email is right here on the screen. It's civics-outreach@google.com. And we're happy to answer any of your questions about G Suite, all the things that you heard today, or just about any Google tools in general. So feel free, shoot us a note, or we'll catch you at the next webinar. So thanks so much, James. I really appreciate you hopping on with us today. I know that there's so many tools out there, and I think this is one of the most fundamental ones, because it really does help the collaboration and communication within organizations.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
In the future.
Of course. Thanks so much. Bye, everybody.